All right, we are officially recording. This is the second Lakepoint Incorporation feasibility study hearing. We are joined tonight. I guess I should introduce myself first. I'm Justin Lee. I'm the Director of Elections in the Lieutenant Governor's office. Our office oversees the incorporation process. And we have with us Susie Becker from Zions, who is over the feasibility study, who completed the feasibility study for us. So the run of show tonight, we'll turn the time to Susie to go over the contents of the feasibility study. And then once we get through that presentation, we will take any questions that anybody has about the study. So Susie, I will turn it over to you.
Great, thanks, Justin. I'm going to share my screen. So just 1 second here. Okay, I think that's doing it.
Yeah, that's great. We can see it.
Okay, and let's just do it in the slideshow mode here. That might be a little, there we go. Okay, well, my name is Susie Becker. I work at Zions Bank. I head up the Municipal Consulting Group, part of Public Finance. We have done, just for a little background, we've done lots and lots of these incorporation and annexation feasibility studies over the years. Some have decided to proceed to incorporate as their own city or town, and others have not. For example, Marriott Slaterville is one we did, and as you know, that's a city in Utah. There's another one we did, Hooper, years ago, became its own city. Other ones like West Mountain down in Utah County, College Young area in Cache County, they went through the process and they decided not to go forward and incorporate as a separate city. So our purpose is just to do a third-party independent objective study that fulfills the requirements of Utah code. And these requirements are listed very specifically in the code, and our report follows Utah code section by section is a chapter. Each section of the code is a chapter in our study. Okay, so just a little background quickly. An incorporation petition was filed received by Tualatin County before we were even involved. On November 3rd, the governor's office Lieutenant Governor's office hired us, as they have to do. Have to hire a consultant to do a feasibility study. We had 90 days to do the study, so we needed it done before February 1st. Then there was a period of time for comments could come back, and then 2 public hearings have to be held, and tonight, April 20th, is the second of those. I think you're all pretty familiar with the map. Here's the map of the area. This is the area that's being proposed, considered for possibly incorporation. If you want to see any more detail or see these slides again, they are all posted on the Lieutenant Governor's website. The entire report is. So, as I said, the study has to follow the requirements of the Utah Code Section 10-2A-205. It's completed by a third-party independent consultant within a 90-day time frame, as we've said. So the main components of the study, there's like 8 or 9 sections there, but the main components are, there's a socioeconomic analysis. Does it make sense from this point of view? The big one is to do a budget for the proposed city. What would be the projected revenues and expenses for 5 years? We'll go through these in some detail in a minute. And then with this budget, what would be the tax impacts on those people living in the new city if it incorporates? And then we've also got the folks left in the unincorporated county if Lakepoint were to opt out and become its own city, and how it would impact those folks that are left in the rest of the unincorporated county. So we'll talk about that as well. So just a little bit of background from the for the socioeconomic analysis. You can see really strong growth here in your residential building permits, especially in the last few years. You have like 135 average over the entire time period. Here is about 108 average. Population projections are robust. You have a large household size, 4.12 persons per household on average in the Lakepoint areas. So if we continue your growth at an average of about 108, just over 100 new residential units per year, and multiply it by a little more than 4, you're going to grow by persons per household. You're going to grow by at least 400 persons per year. Okay, so a little more background. Areas largely residential or vacant, only 25 businesses. You cover 4.6 square miles, which is quite small, and you do have some fairly large areas of vacant land. So this is something that's really in your favor. If we take your taxable value and divide it by your population, you have a fairly high taxable value per capita, which means you've got a pretty good revenue source, and you don't have quite as many folks to provide services for. So that's a favorable sign. Where do we get the property tax revenues from? We take your total taxable value. This number was provided by the Tualatin County Assessor's Office 228 nearly billion. It's made up mainly of real property, which is land and buildings, also personal property, which if you have big businesses, if you have a printing press in there, if you've got, any kind of machinery, you have personal property. And then centrally assessed is when you have things that may cross over lines between jurisdictions. So then the state assesses those: mining, rail lines, pipelines, those type of things. Okay, sales tax is a another big revenue source. Usually property and sales tax are your two biggest revenue sources. And we find that on average, the state distributes about $100 per capita. And the point of sale distribution comes from local businesses in the area. In your case, it's rather minor, although we are seeing this growing as all of your homes are becoming somewhat of their own little retail center as you order online more and more because of COVID, and we are getting more sales tax distribution based on our homes. Anyway, here's our total distribution here for 423,000. You do not have a franchise tax, which is the municipal energy. Cities can charge up to 6% on the taxable portions of your electric and gas, but because you do not now have it in place, we didn't project it going forward. Now, if you become your own city, you can certainly do that and decide you want that revenue source. But for the purpose of the analysis, we're trying to just compare the current, your current sources with the future. Okay, and then you have some weighted road miles, and of course that has a population and a weighted road mile distribution as well. So let's look at more detail. Here we are on the revenue projections in the proposed city. Big sources, like I said, are property tax, which is taken that taxable value. And I calculated this it's multiplied by a tax rate. And the tax rate that I used is the same tax rate that you are now paying to Tooele County for municipal services. So when you get your annual tax bill, you're going to have two line items there that go to the county. And then you're going to have like the school district, mosquito abatement, fire district, cemetery, whatever. But on the property tax one, you pay to the general fund of Tooele County. And those are services, you're going to keep paying that tax rate, even if you incorporate. Everybody pays. People in Tooele City pay, and Grantsville pay that tax rate. Because those are services that the county provides countywide, no matter if you're in a city or not. But there's also another group of services known as municipal services, which cities generally provide directly to their own citizens. And so the county has to provide those for the unincorporated areas, which you now are. So you pay a separate tax rate for that. So if you're to become a city, that tax rate that you're paying to the county goes away. And I have just transferred it here to the new city. So it shouldn't impact your pocketbook to do the analysis, okay, to see if we come up short on revenues compared to expenses, or if we come out even, or how, can do this. So that's where the property tax comes from. Sales tax is based on your population distribution here and the point of sale. And your point of sale is pretty small. You don't have a lot of businesses. I think there's a lot of potential for growth there. Okay, this is a big one, building permits. And so this was an interesting one. It's high because we're projecting pretty strong growth for you. And so you may say, well, but what if, development were not to occur, growth were not to occur as rapidly as planned? Well, you also have a direct cost associated with this for the building inspections, the plan, the issue, the services you're going to provide for development to go forward, for new development to take place. So when you see the expenses, we have taken the exact same amount in expenses as we have put in for revenue and building permits. So if you have a slower year, it wouldn't matter. It'll be a wash in the end. Class BC road funds, we mentioned that before. They have a population and a road mile distribution as well. And then you can have some miscellaneous charges for services you provide. So our total revenues are really getting up here pretty quickly to 1.2, 1.3 million. Okay. By law, we only project out for 5 years. So kind of keep those numbers in your mind a little bit, 1.2, 1.3 million. And now we're going to talk about the expenses. The Utah Code is very specific on how I have to do the analysis of what it will cost for your services. It says the feasibility consultant shall assume the proposed municipality will provide a level and quality of municipal services that are provided to the area of the proposed municipality at the time the feasibility consultant conducts the feasibility study. So it has to be the same level of service that you're now getting is what I project in terms of expenses. Now you may say, well, wait a minute, one reason we want to do this is we really want to put a lot more money into our police service. We want to have twice, the patrol or whatever. You can do that when you become a city, but for the purpose of the study, I just have to measure the same level of service. And I think it was done to give a feeling of comfort a little bit. Oh, good, our police service won't go away. They're not cutting this so close that we're not gonna be able to afford what we now have. So it is measured on the same level of service. So some of the main considerations in a budget are you have to have by law a recorder and a treasurer, two separate. It's obviously for accounting purposes, and we've got to have two separate positions here. And then if you're a new city, you're going to contract for services. You're not going to likely do what you want, but we just don't see new cities starting up their own police department the very first day. They contract for a while or for some other types of services often. So what I did is I got some contract prices for you for public safety and roads. These are estimates. They're non-binding estimates. They're not really contracts at this point. And so who were the most likely where the most likely places you could get who would provide public safety and roads? It would be Tooele County, Tooele City, or Grantsville. Both Tooele City and Grantsville declined to participate at this point. Tooele City said it wasn't interested. Grantsville said, well, we might be at some future point, but we have a lot going on right now. So anyway, but for the purpose of the study, Tooele County did respond. So here's your public safety. So I'll show you the total amount in a minute. And then I just, as a means of comparison for you to maybe feel some level of comfort with it, on a per capita basis, you're about the same as Stockton, right about the same as Mount Pleasant. You're really close to Perry, Fillmore, you're higher than Fillmore. You're really right in the ballpark on that. And the way the Tooele County did this, they took the total number of calls for service that they receive in the county, and you represent 15.2% of those calls. So they took their total budget and they charged you 15.2% of the total budget plus 10% for administrative costs if you were overhead, if you were to go on your own. So the level of service you now have is that they generally have 4-man crews serving Lakepoint, Stansbury, and Erta. Sometimes three men is a minimum crew. So is there someone always patrolling your area? No, not necessarily, because they're covering all three areas, but that's the level of service that this cost estimate is based on. Roads were based on the same type of approach, the number of your weighted road miles. And you can see here, your cost is a little bit higher, and compared to like Stockton, similar to Beaver, Parowan. Anyway, that's what it comes out to be on a weighted road mile basis. This includes your operating costs. It does include snow plowing, and it includes the same level of capital costs, same level of pothole patching, restriping, chip seal, crack seal, whatever you've been receiving in the past. That's the estimate going forward. May not be what you want, but that's a fair way of looking at it for now. Okay, so then I think we've talked about a lot of these categories already. Building official, that just cancels out there the building permit revenues we talked about. We talked about having to have a recorder and finance. This includes salary plus benefits. We've added on a little bit of more administrative for other things to code, some other services, such as code enforcement, those types of things. Mayor and council. So some startup cities, Marriott Slater was an example, their mayor and council were not paid the first 2 years. They decided that was a place they could save money. But in order to be conservative, I did add in some general cost for them. Let's see, we've got planning, engineering costs. You probably, a lot of this you might contract for. Your building, I'm always asked about a building. You do not have to build a building, but you have to have a place where you can meet. So this includes rent and utilities. And you've got some buildings in the area that you could probably, reasonably use. We talked about the police. You're gonna have dispatch. Besides, you're gonna have about $15 per call on your dispatch. Road costs, and I said they were provided by, and there's actually a letter at the end, or in the appendix to the feasibility study from the county for both public safety and for the roads, talking about how they came up with this estimate. And it's a non-binding estimate. There is some risk there that those costs could go up, certainly. but that's kind of the best we can get at this point in time. So we have added in some extra costs here for startup costs. I've added in a pretty good amount of legal every year as well, plus additional legal. You have to have codes and ordinances and everything the first year. So you can see we're in a pretty similar ballpark, maybe a little higher in expenses and revenues here, balancing out and then doing pretty well. So here's the summary. You can just kind of see this way. Here we go. So here's your revenue, expenses, net revenues. So revenues are about 93% of expenses here. Year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you can see that this percentage of revenue to expenses increases, meaning revenues are more than expenses. Once we kind of start breaking even here. We've just got some startup costs that we've thrown in, I think, in the first year that makes it a little bit more expensive, which is not surprising. But you do pass the threshold of 105% revenues to expenses with that, an average of 107% there. So overall, if we take all of your expenses and we divide it by your population, this is what the budget comes out to be. A little higher than Stockton, a little higher than Beaver, a little less than a few of these others. These are cities that were selected. You might say, why in the world are these in here? Similar population size, generally. Terry's got a lot more business interest, so they've got a lot more commercial base. So that one, not surprisingly, is higher. Okay, so now we're going to change gears. We just talked about the impacts on the city budget. So the other big financial impact that I mentioned at the beginning is what happens to those who are left to remain in the unincorporated county. So when you get your tax bill, these are the different entities to which you are paying. You're going to pay to Twilla County. Twilla means the county right here. You pay to this, and they've got some collecting levies. They're really small amounts. The school district, the mosquito abatement, North Twilla Fire, and here's this municipal service type fund that I told you about before. So you're paying this amount to the county and this one up here. This one, you won't pay the county anymore. But I took that same tax rate, and that's how I came up with your revenue for your new budget. So all of you now pay to these areas, okay? So the fire district, your fire service isn't impacted at all. You just stay in the fire district, you pay the same rate. There's no impacts there. Those of you who are in the cemetery and park service area, so some of you are in the park service area and some are not, and some are in the Lakepoint Improvement District and some are not. If it's shaded in gray, all of you are in these service areas. Only portion of the study area are in these two right here, but it will not change for those who are. So here's a map of the area, and you can see the different tax districts. You've got several here. And so that's why there's that little bit of difference that I just showed you. Okay, so there's two funds that are going to be impacted by the county. They have a special revenue fund, they call it Fund 11, and it's on road impacts. The county it now has, okay, so here you go. The county has about 4 million in revenues. You account for this much in revenues. That comes from your Class BC road funds that comes in that, and you saw that now this amount is not going to go to the county, it's going to go to the new city. That's based on your weighted earned miles and your population. Remaining county revenues, given the remaining taxable value in the county, what tax rate would it take to make up this loss? Because they can reduce expenses a little by 122,000. Here's your net loss of revenue. It's about $2.72 on a $250,000 home. So there's not much impact from that one. There is a little bit more from the special revenue fund because they're going to lose your property taxes, your payment in lieu of taxes, your sales taxes. They'll lose your building permits and animal licenses, but this is also can be reduced some by some savings for not providing some of those services. So, and that one, I think we had about $30-some impact per $250,000 home. So the result of all of this was that incorporation is feasible. Risks may exist if there are economic downturns that could result in decreased sales tax revenues. Opportunities, as I interviewed, I talked to a lot of people as part of this. Garbage collection rates, they thought could be negotiated at a better rate. Residential development in your area, this was a strong one. May attract more commercial development and can lead to more retail and office growth. There seem to be rumors of a lot of good development people have heard about. And also several adjacent areas could potentially be annexed in the future. And there's been some rumors of that, but that did not play into any of the numbers. There's just a qualitative section that I wanted to add, so I added those in. And I just wanted to finally give thanks to everybody who participated, Twilla County and the city, Grantsville City, Utah State Tax Commission, the petitioners, Lieutenant Governor's Office, everyone and all the individuals who participated as well. So now I'm going to turn this back over to Justin. I can stop sharing. We can look at these numbers again if we need to, and see if you have questions or comments.
All right, Susie, thank you so much for that presentation. Yeah, so at this point, we will take questions or comments. You can either put them into the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself, you can also unmute yourself and ask the question that way if you would like. But we will take questions for the next few minutes. And I know if people are typing a question in the chat, that takes a minute. So I will give it just a minute before I make the call that we're shutting down. So the question is Tooele County the sponsor of the study? The answer to that is no. The Lieutenant Governor's office is the office that oversees the incorporation process. So we contracted with Zions and with Susie as the study of the author. So Tooele is not a sponsor of the study. Who are the sponsors from our community? Oh, that is a great question. Susie, I don't know if you have those names off the top. I can find them.
Yeah, no, the chief sponsor is Ryan Zumwalt, Z-U-M-W-A-L-T. And there were several others listed. I'm happy to look for those as well. I don't have those off the top of my head, but I think we can certainly find that.
But Ryan has been the contact sponsor for our office, and I know that the chief went for Susie as well.
Right, he's the only one I've really worked with, so that's the one I know. I'm looking but not finding it yet, so go ahead if you have any other questions.
So the question, I'm surprised they haven't been at these meetings. Do you know why they're interested in incorporating? Honestly, no. Susie, I don't know if you've heard that in their conversations. I don't know exactly what their interest is in incorporating. From our perspective, it's, you know, we get the signatures that qualifies the proposed incorporation to go to a study, and then we contract for the study. There's not really a discussion necessarily why people want to incorporate or not. So I don't think I could intelligently speak to that.
You know, I will make a comment about working with Ryan. And this is not, I'm not either way. I'm just saying that he was very eager that it be a third party, independent, objective study, and was happy to provide any information. I did talk to him once if we needed it, but he was very good. He was very professional about the whole process. Wasn't trying to influence one way or the other, and maybe, you know, he just wants to make sure that it is seen as this third party, independent, objective study that it is. So I looked at my records, Justin, and I believe we only ever had Ryan's information.
And that's probably accurate for you.
Okay.
I know I could go look them up, but it's not something I could find right off. It's not on this laptop. It's on a completely different machine where I could go find that. So thank you. I'm on a computer with no mic, but I appreciate your work. So thank you. We appreciate that. I will make this magic statement. If there are no other questions, I'll leave it open for about 2 minutes. But if there's no other questions, we will end the meeting. For everyone's information, the meeting is being recorded and will be posted on our website. If you go to municert.utah.gov, you can see last week's meeting as well as this week's meeting and read the study itself. I'm going to grab that link and put it in the chat. For anybody that wants to go there. All right, I'm going to do one last call. If anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat now or unmute yourself if you have a question. If not, we'll end the meeting here in about 1 minute. All right, not seeing any additional questions. I just want to thank those who came tonight and particularly thank Susie for her presentation and all her work on this study. Thank you so much, Susie. I can't tell you how much we appreciate it. It's always a pleasure working with you.
Thank you.
And then we will have this video on the website tomorrow if anybody wants to go find that or if they want to share that with anybody else. The one question that was not asked that I will answer anyway is what are the next steps? And after this, the sponsors of the incorporation have 1 year to gather signatures if they want from landowners and from registered voters to actually put the question on whether or not Lakepoint should incorporate on the ballot. So we'll watch from the sponsors if they're going to go forward, assuming they are, and those will be the next steps. But again, thank everybody for participating, and we will end the broadcast now.